Hi, my name is Helen. Welcome to my art room, where I would like to share with you what has inspired my images and creative writing. I've been on an exciting journey exploring archaeological sites, myths, and folklore, and this is an ancient history of art centered on women for people who are intrigued by transformatory tales and would like to translate them into modern myths to inspire the future. After 3 years of COVID, I at last got down to London at the beginning of July and was lucky enough to see the Jez Butterworth play Jerusalem at the Apollo Theatre, starring Mark Rylance as Johnny Rooster Byron and Mackenzie Crook as Ginger. This play is set on St George's Day, the morning of the local county fair. Johnny Rooster Byron, local rebel and modern-day lord of the dance, is a wanted man. Wiltshire Council has served an eviction notice on his caravan in the woods for dealing drugs and leading the young astray. Troy Whitworth, a thug known to abuse his stepdaughter Phaedra, who sings the hymn Jerusalem at the start of the play, thinks Rooster is hiding her and wants to beat him up. And a crew of hangers-on want to tap Rooster's supply of whiz and alcohol. In the face of Ginger's attempts to cut through his bullshit, Rooster mesmerises those drawn to him through ribald humour and swearing, in both senses, that his enchanting myths are true. Rooster presents himself as a legend of England, a daredevil descendant of an ancient pastoral tradition of mystic shaman showmen, knowing jesters who tell truth to self-deceivers while being somewhat disingenuous about their own shortcomings. Rooster represents the wild and free, a magical energy which we all should take care not to snuff out, a paradoxical rightness in chaos, an unpredictable, untamable force that connects us to the earth itself. You could liken Rooster to the ancient Greek Bacchus, god of festivity, wine, ecstasy, theatre, trees and forest, ritual madness and facility. So recognising this mystical pre-Christian immersion with the spirit of England's land as embodied by Rooster was something of a coincidence or synchronicity for me, given that I'd visited the British Museum earlier that day to see the Feminine Power exhibition. There I enjoyed touching with my eyes real objects of fascination that I've seen so often as photographs in books. For example, the painted clay relief from Iraq of the Queen of the Night, also shown in its original colours. As I looked around the exhibition and read the captions, I grew concerned that there was big gaps in the references, since I'd been studying representations of goddesses from around the world from the time I was an art student some 35 years ago. So I'd like to use this vlog to draw your attention to what I feel is important missing information and perceptions for enjoying the exhibition. For example, I'd like to have seen a very early depiction of Aphrodite holding a casket while standing astride on the flying wings of a goose. A clothed, wise goddess, not in any way eroticized, holding a box of life's secrets. The book accompanying this exhibition, written by Belinda Carrera, starts with an examination of feminine power with female sculptures from the Ice Age, and she critiques mid to late 19th century descriptions of these, which dismissively labelled them as Venus figurines, and their prominent genitalia as immodest depictions of women fashioned by men to arouse or reflect erotic desires. In contrast, Carrera references Maria Gimbutas, an archaeologist and scholar of Indo-European culture and a professor at the University of California, Los Angeles from the 1970s to the 1990s. Carrera writes, and I quote, "In archaeological and anthropological academia, the work of Gimbutas and her followers, often termed the goddess theory, has heavily been criticised for the assumption inherent in the identification of all objects and symbols from this period, prehistoric, are specifically religious and even in some cases female, and their cultural significance as universal. This theory, however, and its ancient depictions of women on which it is based, created a galvanising new mythology within second wave feminism, according to which the struggle for female equality or even ascendancy in 20th century Western culture, together with the worship of female divinity, was merely a reclamation of a social and spiritual reality that had been lost, a reality that for some existed like most matters of faith beyond the need for empirical evidence." End quote. What does empirical mean? Based on, concerned with, or verifiable by observations or experience rather than theory or pure logic. Well, having studied the published works of Gimbutas, I think in broad terms there is empirical evidence to support the theory of a universal understanding of female divinity. This shows itself in folk practices, anthropology, and a study of folk tales in Germany has revealed the deep history of these stories that have held up a mirror portrait to women which is bent, twisted, cracked to lose segments over time in cultural changes. This phenomenon has been explored by Robert Graves in his Greek myths, by James George Fraser in The Golden Bough, in The Origin of Private Property, the Family and the State by Frederick Engels, plus many, many others since. In fact, the worldwide concept for feminine power, the Feminine Power exhibition, would not have come into being had not Gimbutas not given patriarchal, misogynist archaeology a good kick up the arse. For she opened up a broad canvas for people to fill in this evidence. I also have to point out that as an occupational therapist, my practice had to be evidence-based, and when you closely examine scientific papers, you rarely find a definitive yes or no, only percentages toward certain outcomes. So an interpretation is always subject to being updated. Putting evidence aside, the mythical implications of the Gimbutas theory, a la the rooster spirit of anarchic creativity connected to the spirit of the land, has inspired, driven and engenders enormous confidence in women, which is an inestimable force. And it can be argued all religions are in essence myths. Going back to the Ice Age Venus figurines, there has been much talk in art colleges over the years on how a female artist could appropriate the gaze, or the one who looks, away from the male. It needs to be made clear that this is not easy when contemplating the vulva in Western culture, because Christianity has so completely despiritualized the act of procreation, the genitalia, and even words like chromosome are considered unclean by certain fundamentalists. And I'm not altogether sure Kiki Smith's Lilith has managed to wrest the gaze for women. However, how refreshing and profoundly adjusting to the mind is the idea of the vulva from a female perspective as a divine doorway into the world. Some of the very early images of the female form may indeed have been created by another species, likely Neanderthals, and witnessing a child entering the world is indeed an amazing and wondrous event. And isn't that a universal connection over time and across people? Notwithstanding Shakti's yoni, semantically I believe there is a connection between Venus and venerate, just as much as there is between Venus and venereal. If you wish to research these ideas further, I've put some links below to other stories from the art room for you to explore. Thanks for watching.